Daf Yomi Tractate Sanhedrin, page 77, B, with the words Siman, Sulam, Tris, Simanin, Bakosel. It's a mnemonic. The Gemara cites a mnemonic. It's called a siman of words that stand for different halachot or ideas that are going to be talked about. And the siman here is sulam, ladder. So the Gemara cited a mnemonic for the halachot that follow with regard to causing the death of another. So it's sulam, taris, simanin, bekosel. So it's ladder, shield, herbs, and in a wall. Okay, Amarava dachva lebor, the sulam bebor. Ubachar v'silko. Ve'afilu yikadam v'silko pater. Devayidne d'shadiyach lalas hu. Rava says in a case where one pushed another into the pit, and there was a ladder in the pit that would enable him to emerge from it, and another individual came and removed the ladder, or even if the perpetrator himself removed the ladder before the one whom he pushed could emerge, causing him to die of starvation, the perpetrator is exempt from execution. The reason is that at the time that he cast him into the pit, the victim was able to ascend and emerge from the pit. Pushing him into the pit did not cause his death, and the removal of the ladder merely prevented the victim from emerging, but was not an action that directly caused his death. That's arguable. I think it did cause his death. But anyway, certainly this person would be accountable from heaven. We're just talking about what the earthly court can punish him for. Okay, Amarava Zorak Chetz Utris Biado Ubachar Venatlo Efilu Hu Kadam Menato Pater Dibaidna Dishadya Ben Misak Psiki Gere. And Rava says in the case of one who shot an arrow at another and there was a shield in the victim's hand. If another individual came and took the shield from him, I don't know how that's possible. How do you take a shield during the time? Or even if the one who shot the arrow took the shield before the arrow reached the victim, how do you do that? You shoot the arrow and you take the shield away? That's just not realistic. Anyway, the arrow reached the victim, the attacker is exempt from execution. The reason is that at the time that he shot the arrow at the victim, his arrows were blocked from the one being attacked by the shield, and they could not harm him. The victim's death was caused indirectly by removal of the shield. V'yamarava zarvochet zesimanim v'yado uba'achar v'pizran v'afilu hu kadam v'pizran pater divaidna d'shada be yachol litrapotava. And Rava says, in the case of one who shot an arrow at another, and the victim had herbs in his possession capable of healing the wound from the arrow before it became fatal. If another individual came and scattered the herbs, or even if the one who shot the arrow scattered them before the victim could heal his wound with the herbs, the attacker is exempt from execution. These are horrible situations. Knowledge of the law is sin. Straight up, man. But anyway, I mean that in a certain sense, knowledge of the law. Like, the law is sin? What's it saying? The law is sin? The law is sin? The law of sin and death is a biblical principle. It states that sin results. No, it's not that. Anyway, all right. somebody knows what I mean. Okay, the reason is that at that time he shot the arrow at him. The victim was able to be cured. The arrow caused injury, but the victim died due to the availability of a cure. But he made it unavailable, so he should be responsible. He should be. Amar Rav Ashi Hilkach Afilu Simanin B'Shuk. Amar Le Rav Ashi Nizdamnu Lo Simanin Mahu. Amar Le Harayatsa B'Beis Din Zakai. Rav Ashi says it is established that one who shoots an arrow at another is exempt when herbs that could facilitate his recovery are available. Therefore, even if there are herbs available in the marketplace, the attacker is exempt from execution, as in that case too. The herbs are available to Acha son of Rava, says Rav Ashi. If the herbs are not available in the marketplace and herbs capable of healing the wound happen to enter into the victim's possession, yet he neglected to use them and died, what's the halacha? Rav Ashi said to Rav Acha, he emerged from the court innocent, as long as there was a possibility that the victim could heal his wound with the herbs. The one who shot the arrow is not the murderer. Rather, he is merely one who caused death indirectly. Okay, whatevers. B'yamarava, Sorek Sorek Koislun B'chazir Acharaya B'charaga Chayiv B'tana Tuna Kigon Elu Amisachakin B'kadur Shehargu B'mezid Nerogin B'shogi Goylin. And Rava says in the case of one who threw a stone with the intent to kill another, and the stone caromed. Never heard that word before. Caromed? It bounced, ricocheted or something. Caromed off the wall and rebounded back and killed a different individual. The attacker is liable. And the Tana taught in a similar halacha in the Braita, in a case where those who were playing with a ball killed another by hitting him with the rebounding ball, if they did so intentionally, they are executed by beheading. If they did so unwittingly, they are exiled. B'shoy gegoylin, pshita, b'mezig ne'rogen, yitzchle, ma'udetem is, v'ro'asaviku, mi'amidad k'mash malan. The Gemara asks, if they did so unwittingly, they're exiled. This is obvious. All unwitting murderers are exiled. The Gemara answers, the novel element in this Braita is not that the unwitting murderer is exiled. Rather, it was necessary for the Torah to teach that if they did so intentionally, they're executed. The halacha needed to be taught, lest you say that they cannot be executed because the death penalty requires certain forewarning. Meaning forewarning of an action that will certainly lead to the death penalty. In this case, the forewarning is uncertain, as who is to say that the ball will rebound and cause death? Therefore, the Tana teaches us that those who play ball are trained in throwing it, and the ball will certainly rebound. Therefore, there is no uncertainty. Next, Tanya of Tachlifa Bar Ma'arvo Kame Daryabahu. Rav Tachlifa from the west, meaning Israel, taught this Braita before Rabbi Abahu. Kegon elu hamisachakin b'kadur shehorgu toch arba amos pater chutz arba amos chayev. In a case where those who were playing with a ball killed an individual by hitting him with the ball, if the ball struck the individual within 4 cubits of the one who threw the ball, he is exempt from being exiled, as it was certainly not his intent to throw the ball so short a distance, beyond 4 cubits. He is liable to be exiled. Next, Amar le Ravina Lavashi Echidami Idkani Chale Afila Purta Nami Idoloni Chale Afila Tuva Nami Lo. Amalei, Stab, Visachakin Mekadur, Kamedai Tvei, Menach Nichale. Ravina said to Rav Ashi, questioning his halacha, what are the circumstances if he was amenable to having the ball travel a short distance? Then he should be liable even for a throw less than 4 cubits. And if he was not amenable to having the ball travel the distance that it traveled, but he wanted to travel farther, then he should not be liable even for a throw greater than 4 cubits. In what case is the measure of 4 cubits significant? Rabbi Bahu said to him, with regard to ordinary people who play with a ball, the farther they endure and approach the wall, the more amenable they are to the result, as the ball caroms, there's that word again, caroms, off the wall and rebounds further. Therefore, presumably their intent was that the ball would travel a distance greater than 4 cubits. Puzzle. The Gemara questions the principle underlying this halach. Is that to say that in a case like this, when an item caroms off the wall, the action is considered the result of his force? And the Gemara raises a contradiction from a Mishnah, Para 6.1. In the case of one who sanctifies the waters of purification by placing the ashes of the red heifer into the water in order to sprinkle on one impure with impurity imparted by a corpse, and the sacred ashes fell on his hand or on the side of the vessel, and only thereafter it fell into the water in the trough, the purification waters are unfit, since there is a requirement that the ashes must be placed in the water by the force of his action. Likewise, when an item caroms off a wall, the action is not generated by the force of his action. Therefore, he should not be liable. The Gemara answers with what we're dealing here. We're dealing with the case where the ashes trickle from his hand or from the sides of the vessel into the water, slow movement that is not generated by the force of his action. This is in contrast to the case where he throws the ball off the wall. Okay? Toshima. I think we can do this. The Gemara suggests, coming here, proof that only an action that one generates directly is considered the force of his action, as is taught in the Mishnah in Para 12.2, concerning a needle that was impure with impurity imparted by a corpse, and was placed on an earthenware shard, and one sprinkled water purification, if there is uncertainty whether he actually sprinkled the purification water on the needle, or whether he sprinkled it on the earthenware shard, and the water inadvertently sprayed upon the needle, his sprinkling is unfit. Apparently, an action performed indirectly is not considered to have been generated by his force. Amar Rav Chanina bar Yehuda Mishmei Rav Matza Itmar. Rav Chanina bar Yehuda said in the name of Rav, a man in the Mishnah sprayed mitzah was not stated in the Mishnah. Rather, matzah, found, was stated. That is, it was found that the needle was wet. And it is not clear whether it was wet from purification water sprinkled directly upon it, or from water that dripped from the earthenware onto the needle. This case is not comparable to the case of one who throws a ball off of a wall. Kashkale bitka demaya gide didehu. Michayv hanimili v'koich rishon. Avukol sheni grama bialmahu. Rav Papa says, with regard to this one who bound another and diverted a flow of water upon him, and he died. The water is tantamount to his arrows that were effective in committing the murder, and he is liable. And this matter applies only in a case where he killed the other individual by primary force, as if the individual was near to him and was directly drowned by the water. But if the individual was further away and was killed by secondary force after the water flowed on its own, it is not his action, rather it is merely an indirect action, and he is exempt. Ve'amar Rav Papa, Zarak tzror lemala ve'holchol tzadi chayev. Amar le ma b'ravashi Rav Papa ma'itama mishum dekochahu yikochahu tezel le'el. Rav Papa says in a case where one threw a stone upward and it went to the side and it killed an individual, he is liable. Mar, the son of Rav Ashi, says, Rav Papa, what is the reason that you say he is liable? Is it due to the fact that the result is generated by the force of his action? That cannot be, as if it's generated by the force of his action, the stone should go directly upward where he threw it, not to the side. Okay.